Beginning of my video. Boom!
Welcome back to Boring Reviews.
Boring land.
Oh, just
on.
kidding.
Blasphemer!
Hello,
Right.
Boring Review Nation.
Kind of pointless.
We know all things. It was over in a snap.
We really want it. Alright, we'll be nice.
Only you can be a Patreon.
Oh my gosh!
Look out.
You don't need to follow the show to be hyped.
All right. What's up, Boring Reviews? Boring land. Nick here.
Hello, Boring Review Nation. Hey.
And let's jump right into it. We review Raman Raghav 2.0. Remember when we did the trailer reaction? We both looks like quite the performance from Nawaz. And so we were definitely excited about it. And lo and behold, available on YouTube. So, I mean, it was available to us all that time, but I'm super excited to talk about it, and I know you are. So let's have you jump us in.
Well, when I remember the first time somebody sent it to us, it was like it's not the second part. It's just called Raman Raghav 2.0. And after watching the movie, we know why it is. It's because he's the second iteration, or he's a copycat of the original Raman Raghav, who was a serial killer. But dude, I am torn. Like, this may be his best performance. I mean, I love Gaiton Day I absolutely love Gaiton Day, and I love his performance in Gangs of Wassapur. Wassapur. People had to correct me on that, but man, he is absolutely unhinged here. Holy cow! This was an unbelievable performance.
Yeah, I'm the same way with you. I was super excited for his performance. Doing a little bit of research and reading about this movie. So there was a real off in the 60s, and he took out homeless people, and he had about 41 people in all that he was taking out.
Holy cow.
This film was based off of a fictional character, 2.0, which was, I don't want to, because that's not the best word when you're talking about killers, but the story was inspired from the original. When Nawaz gave his interview to Our Stupid Reactions, they had asked him a role like the Joker. And he said, well, basically, I already have. That was my role in Raman Raghav. And so when he said that, I said, holy cow. Because Heath Ledger, when he did the Joker, so much preparation. He locked himself into an apartment, from what I understand. He wrote in the Joker's journal trying to find the character. He found him, obviously. And when I was that Nawaz, I'm not sure if he was inspired by Heath Ledger, but he did the same thing. He isolated himself. He wanted to get to know Raman Raghav, and he said he kind of frightened himself. And interesting point, you have Vicky Kaushal, who I didn't realize that was him. He did a not too long ago, and we were super excited about it. But he plays the cop, the crazy. I think his name was Raghav or something like that. Raghavan. Right. He did the same thing. He isolated himself in preparations. So they both really put in some work, and you can tell in this movie that they really found that sweet spot.
Dude, I was just gonna say, man, Vicky did a great job as well. This movie was super, super dark. I can already know what kind of grade you're probably gonna give it, because it's one of those movies where, listen, there are no protagonists. You know what I mean? For the most part, both your leads are antagonists, and man, just the way the story was told, up until the very end, I did not know. Okay, why am I watching this movie? Obviously it's an unbelievable performance, but how do these two stories even intertwine? And then at the end, when they give you that, they close the story for you, so to speak, you understand what it is. And I have seen tons of Netflix documentaries on like the Iceman and other serial killers like that. And bro, this is how they think. They are super, super dark, man. And you tell Nawaz took it there, bro. This was probably one of the darkest performances I've ever seen. Period. It was super scary.
And I, even though I'm not a villain lover like you are, I appreciate true acting and role. I don't believe that everyone has to be a method actor, but I actually love when people do, because I feel like the performance is really they show through the screen whenever you have that method for the people that can do it, like a Daniel Day-Lewis or a Jared Leto or whatever, Heath Ledger. And so the performance is outstanding. This movie in the story later on, but I want to focus a lot on the acting right now, because it's just you can't say enough about where Nawaz goes. And we see him as Faisal. We see him play some pretty dark roles in film and on television. But I believe, from what I've seen so far, there was so much into the character. I feel like this was, I don't want to say the most focused, because that's going to take away from his other previous roles. But I mean, the preparation he went into definitely paid off. Like I said earlier, his acting was absolutely fantastic. And even if this movie was a B, the acting turns it up to an A. It turns this movie up to a D or a C, because his acting is just that much on point. But it's not just his acting. He puts on a clinic. He is a star. But it's not just his acting that he goes into, and the looks on his eyes, and you can kind of see the way his brain is thinking after you get used to the character after an hour. For me, I love the other two. Have Vicky Kaushal, like I mentioned, who plays the cop. That character drove me crazy. I could not stand him. He drove me nuts with the way he treated these all over him, figuratively speaking, and he just did not give a crap. He had a high position in the police force. He really didn't give a crap. He's doing his cocaine. Written so well, because I couldn't stand him, but I couldn't stand him because Vicky Kaushal puts on that kind of performance. And it really, at first, he's kind of playing one note with his sunglasses, demeanor. But when you get to that third act, you see several different layers of his acting abilities in this movie. And that's when I said, oh, this guy is actually putting on an act, playing the cool guy. But then also the girl played by Sobhita Duolapala. I didn't say that correctly, but she plays his girlfriend. And I'm not sure if you're going to be able to pick it up right when I'm saying there's a scene, because I'm not sure if it affected you the same way. But they're in the bed, and he's being a jerk to her. He's getting his gun. He's pointing private area, threatening her. And I'm thinking, what a jerk. You don't treat any woman this way. And she does not skip a beat. She does not seem afraid at all. Part with me. And we both said at the same time, like, oh, she doesn't care. I mean, she just was not. She was fearless. She did not be scared of that at all. And that prowess. See, I don't know this actress too well from previous installments of movies that she's in, but there was a review that said that her acting, she delivered nothing. She didn't have a lot of material, but she did a fine job.
Well, it's funny in that one scene, she stops him like mid-sentence, like, hold on, my mom's on the phone, has a quick conversation with mom. All right, get back to what you were talking about. Like, she didn't even pay him any mind. It was just so crazy. I agree with you. I don't think her performance was empty. I just think that really Nawaz was so strong, and Vicky was really good as well, that everyone else in this movie was overshadowed by them, period. Here's the thing about this performance by Nawaz, which is why I think it's one of the scariest performances. If you look at his character in Gaiton Day, right? Okay, he is, at the end of the day, he's a businessman. All right, he does what he does because it gains him some power. He's, he wants his name to be remembered, obviously, but there's a nation behind there. You could see why they do it that way. Same thing with Gangs of Wasseypur. Bottom line, you know what I mean? He comes from a family of gangsters. This is what they do. They make money. But when you talk about this movie, it's so dark because there is no rhyme or reason. I remember listening to an interview, and I want to say it was like by it was who it was, but he was like, look, there's no difference between you and me. You carry a briefcase, I carry a gun. We're both businessmen at the end of the day. And that's how those people look at it, but they don't kill for fun. At this point, in this movie, he even says, I think his best monologue in the movie is, he's like, I don't kill because I don't hide behind a badge in order to kill. I don't, use any type of religion in order to kill, or any political motivations in order to kill. I kill because I enjoy it. And when somebody gets that dark, it's like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? It's really a disturbing performance, but it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, I was just talking about how dark it was, and the difference between this character and any other character he's played, where, you know, when you're talking about Gaiton Day or when you're talking about Faisal, these guys are gangsters by trade, so it's a business to them. They don't enjoy killing. They don't do it just for their jollies, to get their jollies. They do it because, you know, it's a way of life for them. But, you know, in this character, Raman Raghav, you know, he's inspired by this other serial killer, and he at one point even says he enjoys killing, that he enjoys doing it without having to pretend like behind a badge or behind political means or even a religious means. He does it because he likes it, and that's just a really, really dark thing, man. It was super crazy. Again, this role is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean it's insane because it reminded me a little bit of American Psycho. Is that the name of the movie with Christian Bale? Where
Right.
he's trying to turn himself in. He can't handle it no more. Now that's not Raman's motivation, but Christian Bale's character, he can't handle anymore. And so he tries to turn himself in, and they just, yeah, whatever. He can't do it, even though he tries. And so he's like, he wants to stop himself because he understands he has a psychotic sickness. With Nawaz, I mean, from what he's saying, and when you watch the movie, you're wondering how much of this can you believe? I mean, how much of what he's saying can you actually believe or not believe? And they kind of left a lot of that open for interpretation. At least I didn't pick up on it. But he says, I waited outside your police station. You know, I waited for you out there, and you guys just dismissed me. When he gets apprehended because he confesses these murders, supposedly, and they put him in that warehouse, and they're questioning him, the monologue he goes on, we heard a lot of it in the trailer. I mean, that is acting right there. That is superior acting right there, where he's talking about the tiles. And I mean, he's talking about what he's doing. I believe that he's telling 100% the truth. And he's talking about how he ran out of black tiles and he doesn't like to lose games. And when he's doing that, and he's talking about not wanting to lose games, I mean, he was just out of body in that experience. He was right there. I'm not sure how to describe how awesome his acting was, but that's what it was. It was amazing acting. And I love that whole part because eventually they go to a sidebar. They're like, this guy's just wasting our time. He's going to keep us from catching the right guy. Let's just, let's take care of this guy and get rid of him. But I mean, he tries to come forward to them like an American Psycho, and they don't really believe him because they're like, who is this guy? Why would he be the killer? We want a killer that has a motivation. This guy is just some Yahoo.
Right. And I mean, a lot of times that's the problem where, cops will, or law enforcement in general, will stereotype, well, this is what, a killer's supposed to look like, or this is they're supposed to fit this kind of mold. And it doesn't always happen like that. If you remember, Dahmer got caught early on. And he had this one, I believe it was an Asian boy or whatever that he had kidnapped that got away. So as the Asian boy was drugged running down the streets or whatever, he ran into cops, and the cops were like, "Oh, that's his love or whatever," and gave him back to him, like, because again, they're just not understanding or assuming that anyone can be a killer. And I think that was a big part of this movie. Like, everybody's got that rage, that darkness inside of them. Even this cop who we didn't expect to be a killer ended up being a killer. We saw early on, at least I picked up on that in the apartment, like, oh, he went in there to get drugs, didn't realize that his drug dealer was killed, and now we're getting into the movie. So he goes ahead and kills the guy that was in there that caught him in there. I mean, this without hesitation. And if you kill somebody one time like that without hesitation over what happened to be, who knows how much drugs he took, but really, then you'll kill anyone. And you can see that he did a really good job as well playing that cop role. Very, very, very dark.
Yeah, and so talking about plot, there's not a lot of plot, in my opinion. This is my opinion. There's not a lot of plot in this movie. There's not a lot of things that go on. It's like you're following Raman Raghav 2.0 just from these few days. And unless I'm wrong, the first two murders we see in the movie are the first ones that he commits. Now, he talks about 9 when he goes to the police, and they backtrack a little bit, and they talk about this or that. But you're following Raman Raghav like in a week of his life or something like that. And there's not a lot in the plot. You have this police officer where first, like, he shaves his beard, and then the beard comes back. So it took me a few seconds to realize that was the same guy.
Right.
And you have this girlfriend, you have their story and all that whatnot. There's not a lot that happens in this movie, because what happens, for me at least, is the performances. is them showing you this really dark part of maybe not, it could be anywhere, it doesn't have to be India, but this dark part where the story is set in. And it's about what are these characters doing? And ultimately, it's not till the third act that you get a little bit of a roller coaster ride, a little bit of plot. But for me, I didn't mind that at all. For me, I was intrigued the entire time, intrigued by the performances, intrigued by the dark nature. When he goes to the pawn shop owner and they have that argument about 5 plus 15 equals 25. No, it equals 20. And he says, okay, well, it's 20,000. No, it's 20,000. When you're having that whole thing and then the pawn shop owner dimes him out and the cops come and Raman realizes that it was the shop owner that dimed him out and he kind of gives him a look. I was super intrigued. Okay, how is this going to happen? There's no way Raman's going to let that pawn shop owner get away with it, but he's being arrested. So maybe the pawn shop owner does get away with it. I was feeling nervous for that owner, thinking you better hope the cops don't lose him again because you're going to be in big trouble. And then when he gets out and he goes to the pawn shop owner, and I'm skipping way down the third act, but when he does that, he tells the girlfriend, what's that awesome line he says? He's like, next time 15 plus 15 equals 20, not 20, not whatever it is, you idiot, or something like that.
Right. Having just slit his throat, man. I mean, here's the thing. I understand what you're saying. It's not a plot because normally in a storyline, you're going to have an arc. And did any of these characters have arcs? Not really. They basically were who they were from the very beginning. But I think that's the point of this movie, that, this cop who, when you saw him early on, he looked like he was this clean-cut cop. You saw him in his uniform, clean-shaven. This guy is just as dark as Raman Raghav, right? So the idea is that there is in our society darkness, and it may look like Raman Raghav 2.0, where he's a street guy, or he may look as clean cut as a cop. You just never know. But ultimately, they were both super, super dark. Bottom line.
Yeah, and Raman, he says, sorry to cut you off, he says it perfectly in the movie. He says the only difference between me and you is you get paid to kill people. You have a badge that excuses it.
Right. Which was another great line. I mean, in this kind of movie where it was really easy for Nawaz to outshine his co-star, it really was, and the director took a really big chance. I'm not sure who's the other guy that plays Raman. Raman is Nawaz, and Raghav is I don't know what he's been in before, but you've got to be confident where you're going to have basically.
Oh, I think he's in Yuri. Sorry, I think he's in Yuri, the movie we can't wait to watch. But I think he's the main guy in that movie.
Okay. So you've got to be confident that this guy basically has acting chops and can hold his own, because if not, you run the risk of this movie being a disaster because you got one performance that just overshadows the other one. And the point is to show the duality of these guys, how one is a cop and one is a criminal, but ultimately they're both killers. You know what I mean? And he did a really, really good job. I tell you what, this director is super dark. I love this guy. I got to check out more of his work.
Yeah.
He reminds.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Keep going.
I mean, the way he's filmed this movie, some of the shots, I even like how he was given the, chapter 1, chapter 2, the sister, the brother, the son, it almost reminded me, it was Tarantino-esque, you know what I mean? With his storytelling and obviously with the violence. One of the funny things though is, as far as like the violence is concerned, they left a lot unseen. I am so glad they left that apartment scene with the little boy unseen.
Pocket.
Because that was with Pocket. He said, I think I'll call you Pocket. And when they asked why I killed you, because you were easy pickings. Like, he was just so, and that was so reckless. That was another thing. Like, his sister immediately knew. This is before she had even any intuition that he had just begun his killing spree, that he was a killer, but she always knew. And you always know the darkness that lies inside of people. Like, a lot of times you see these serial killers' parents will tell you, early on we saw signs, they kill cats or small animals or whatever. So his sister was afraid of him from the very, very beginning. Again, they just did such a great job with this film. I think that the biggest issue is, just like Marriage Story, it touches on one of those topics in life that we don't want to really acknowledge because it's too dark to even think about, where you've got some scary people out there. And forget about movies, go ahead and watch like the Edward Kemper interviews, or the ice what was it, the ice pick killer, or the guy that was a serial killer for the mob. It's on YouTube right now. The Iceman killer. Dude, this guy had like 50 bodies on him. And he was saying, dude, I had no problem splattering somebody's brain and then gonna go have a barbecue with my family. You know what I mean? It was a job to me. I think that's where I heard it. You know what I mean? And he was just like,
I want to make a quick point about the director. You mentioned the director. So his name is Anurag Kashyap. This is the guy that directed Gangs of Wasseypur, my friend. Can you believe that? Yes.
Oh, man.
Yes. He directed movies that we have not seen that we've heard about with Nawaz, like Black Friday. And I'm not sure if Nawaz was in No Smoking, but I've heard a lot about No Smoking. This guy did a movie previous to this called like Black Velvet or something. Not Black Velvet, but Velvet something. And I guess it was a box office bomb. And so he wanted to do a period piece. Couldn't do that because of that. Did this movie for $500,000 US. It made a little over $1 million in the box office. But I mean, this film deserves way more love than that, in my opinion. The thing that's awesome is the behind the scenes stuff. So they gave Vicky Kaushal 2 scenes to audition for. He, planned it. He prepared in the way I said by locking himself up, nailed the audition. Nawaz, they wanted him to give, I believe it was like a 60-minute monologue, one take. And so he prepared by locking himself up and just saying nothing but those lines over and over. He went on when they started shooting the audition, 300 minutes of just this monologue that he went on. Who knows what he's talking about?
Wow.
It got to the point where he was so into this character that he was actually hospitalized, because I don't know if he just wasn't eating or sleeping or whatever it was, but he was so entrenched that they had to stop shooting for him to get to the hospital to get some health. He recovered, finished the movie. His wife was saying in interviews that he would sleep like he would be half asleep, half awake, and he would just mumble the lines from this character. I mean, it seems like it really affected this guy. And it's tough that he went on. They said also director of Sacred Games. Holy cow. They said that it said that, he went on and he's fine or whatever, but we are the benefactor of his massive prep work. But I mean, this role almost literally killed the guy because he was hospitalized. I'm not sure how dramatic it was, but that is just, that's super impressive.
Bro, you saw what happened with Heath Ledger, man. When you have to take it there and get that dark, you know what I mean? It's with these method actors, man. A lot of times they take it too far. I remember The Machinist with Christian Bale. He was hospitalized because the guy dropped 90-something pounds and was absolutely dehydrated. You know what I mean? So these guys are serious about their craft, and you got to applaud them. This is a true mastery. Again, I told you I was torn between. I think Gangs of Wasseypur is a better film overall, but as far as the performance, holy cow, this performance is one for the ages. And if it's one of those things where I think that the elite, the people who make those choices, the Hollywood elite, Oscars, Cannes Festival, all those guys that give out awards, same thing. They look at these movies and like, man, this is just way, way too dark. These are subjects that you don't want to breach. Again, I saw Marriage Story one time, and it's such a heartbreaking story about, what I mean? You just don't want to even put yourself in that mindscape, because as a married person, you're like, man, this could happen to me, or this may already be happening to me. You know what I mean? Same thing here, man. Like, there are people this dark. That's scary. And when you got somebody that dark, you just have to say to yourself, like, oh man, I hope I never run into somebody like that, because you see the massive chaos that they drop. Now, I'm Mr. Spoiler, so I just want to go ahead and give a quick synopsis of the movie. I'm not going to try to ruin the whole thing for everybody, but basically, you have this guy. Yeah, you have this guy who, at the very beginning of the movie, you find out he breaks into this house. You don't know why yet, but he breaks into this house and ends up killing the owner of the house, who's a drug dealer. This cop, who you actually open up the movie with the cop doing drugs in a bathroom at a club, is with a girl, pulls up to the house and ends up going there because he's trying to pick up the drugs, this cop. In any event, he finds out that he breaks in the house, finds out his dealer's dead, and as he's looking through his dealer's stats, like, all right, he's dead, I might as well grab it. Here comes this other guy in there, so he ends up killing him. So now that one killing has Raman and Raghav, which are the two main characters, their their destinies basically intertwined. And then we see all these dark killings that Nawaz, our boy Raman, commits, and then he actually goes and tries to confess. They don't believe him. He then escapes, commits some more murders. Now they know it's really him. They're chasing him down, and there's this cat and mouse game where now he's actually following our main detective, the other co-star, Raghav, and he trails him to his apartment. He said he's spying on him with his girlfriend, and that's where you get the whole binoculars thing, which is such a simple thing, but it's such a cool visual. And he says, "I'm God's CCTV" at one point. It was hilarious. You know what I mean? Like, I see everything basically. And then you find out towards the end of the story that their stories are actually intertwined more than you know. I don't want to ruin it because I really think this is the kind of performance everyone should watch. I'm raving about this movie saying, listen, if you want darkness, if you want a performance like, you mentioned it before, Daniel Day-Lewis, okay? Christian Bale in The Machinist, where a guy just goes all out. This is it. And this is it. I tell you what, I'm so upset it took us this long to watch it, especially because it was on YouTube all along. Come on, man.
And it was good quality, too. Whoever put that on there, it was HD. It was good quality, had the subtitles. Pinky Tinky wants to know, do we think that Nawaz should have got an Oscar for this? I'll start off first. At the risk of sounding unauthentic, 100%. If nothing else, at least nominated. 100%. This guy is completely locked in. I love how you mentioned the goggles, because I felt like that was what Nawaz was the entire time. He was focused in and honed in on that. And maybe that was just like a fun little cute thing the director and the writer did. But I think that goes a little deeper to the fact that his character, I believe, has schizophrenia of some type. And so that was his way of being able to focus on one thing at a time, because even when he's talking to someone in the movie, his attention kind of gets, disarrayed and distracted. But then when they say something that strikes a chord, then he just goes back into him and he has that look and you're like, oh, this guy's going to go nuts. You can't predict him. I want to talk a whole lot about the most creepiest sequence in this movie. Do you know what do you think is, in my opinion, is the creepiest sequence in the entire film?
First, let me answer Pinky's question. Absolutely, he should have won an Oscar for this performance. This was one of the darkest performances. Again, put it up there with Heath Ledger's Joker. Put it up there with just recently Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Put it up there with what's this? The boy that won I say boy, he's super old now. For Taxi Driver, actually, and I mentioned it before. I've never seen it, but I know De Niro went for Taxi Driver, and he was super dark there. It's hard to get a role and be that dark. And think about it: in every movie, you've got the hero and you've got the normal trope. And here, there was no hero, and you're captivated for over 2 hours, and you're just following this unbelievable, creepy performance. The creepiest, to answer your question, Nick, what's the creepiest scene of the entire movie? Dude, to me, it was the performance when, or the part when he's in the apartment, he has already murdered his sister, he's murdered her husband, and he's got the little boy in the chair. And he's like, I think, what's your name? I think I'll call you Pocket because you're so small. And when they asked me, just his monologue there, he's just like, when they asked me, why did he do it? Why did he kill the kid? It's like, because he was easy pickings. That was just so dark. It was, and I'm glad they didn't show it, because to me, that was disturbing. And then afterwards, you see that that he did it, ended up killing him because you just saw the kid's body. But that to me was the darkest. What did you think was the darkest thing he did?
No, that was definitely what I was implying, was that whole sequence of him meeting his sister in the hallway of her apartment, and then how the whole thing unfolds. There is so much going on in that 20 or 25-minute sequence, to the point where I wanted to leave, but I couldn't leave because I had to see what was going on. And the writing in this scene is so phenomenal. The acting on all parts, even the little boy, but he's kind of inconsequential as far as acting goes. The woman that plays the sister and that plays the husband, especially the sister, her and Nawaz feed off each other so well in this scene. You see the terror, you see the fright. She knows who her brother is. She doesn't trust him. She doesn't want him to come inside that apartment in the first place. He's being innocent. He's being calm. I just need to take a shower. I just need to eat some food. I'm starving, da-da-da. That whole sequence was just insane and creepy. You have a point where he's got control now. The husband, he's once in the head. He's on the couch bleeding, and the wife sees what's happening. She's getting in protective mode with her son. And so she's like, I know what you want here. Just touch my, whatever. Here's my blouse. And you're like, holy cow, there's like, this guy's involved in incest in his sister. This guy has no limits. And obviously, without saying anything in the dialogue, just that few lines lets us know a whole lot on the history of this character. And that is what I appreciate as a movie watcher, because when I talk about a movie not giving me any kind of hint on what's going on, like I just did the review for Dumb Laga Kehasha, no intention, no information, what's going on, how do we get from here to here? That was the masterclass on how you do it without a whole long exposition for it, but just give me some kind of nugget so I can get an idea of who this character is and where they came from. And that whole sequence for me really brought it, as creepy as it was. I didn't want him to kill any of them. You were right. I didn't want to see the whole pocket scene either, but you kind of knew it was coming because he said, I don't care who I have to kill. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. I don't care. He called him annoying earlier in the movie. That was by far. And then my question for you, you can talk as much as you want, but after you're done with that, my question for you is, she has that opportunity to tell police about it, but she chooses not to. Why does she not say anything when she knows who her brother is?
Because she knows who her brother is. And her best shot at getting her kid and her husband out of there is doing what he says. Because if she comes to the door with cops, or cops come, he's going to kill him before those cops can get in the apartment. That's the only thing I could think of. It's funny you mentioned that. Did you realize that the only two people that killed anybody whatsoever in this movie were Raman and Raghav? Both, the cop serial killer and the serial killer. No one else killed anybody. And then there were a couple times I remember watching this with Savannah where, you're somebody standing right there. You're watching him kill somebody and people are just letting it happen. And if this were an action movie, we'd be like, oh, look, that's just bad acting. How do they just stand there to get killed? But I disagree when you watch this movie, because it really shows you people are not ready for that level of violence. It's like they're in shock. Every time, like even when she hit the husband, and then, or I should say, when Raman hits the husband over the head, she's standing right there. When Raman kills her, the husband's still sitting on the couch with his head leaking. What do you think's gonna happen? And at one point, I'm thinking to myself, dude, do something. But he's still in the couch in shock. And there's several scenes like that through the movie. When you actually see that level of violence, very few people have the ability to act. Everybody freezes. I forget what movie it was where he's like, everybody in the movies, when something happens, everybody jumps to action. But what really happens is you get this dumb look on your face and you just freeze. I think it might have been in Guy Ritchie's Snatch. You know what I mean? You freeze. That's what happens. And everybody here froze because they were not ready for that level of violence.
Yeah, no, totally. And one of the coldest things that he does in this movie, at least one that I can remember right now, is when he's still in that apartment. He has taken out the husband and the wife, his sister and husband, and he finishes his food. He sits down. He's talking trash to Pocket. He finishes his food. He goes into the kitchen and he places down the plate. Now, for most of us, when we're eating something, especially something with a lot of spice, and he put a lot of spice and herbs and stuff in there, when you eat that, all you want to do is just take a nap and lay down because you get acid indigestion or something like that. You feel full, but you're like, okay, now I need to go rest. He puts that plate down, and before he leaves the house, in his mind, okay, I got to take out this loose end right now. I mean, that is the coldest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, it doesn't even affect him at all. He just puts down his plate. I'm done eating. Now I'll take out this kid and I'll get out of here. I mean, this guy's crazy. When he starts creeping up to that lady who is the lady with the baby in that little village, she ends up being the housekeeper of the lady. When he goes in there and first it's just her, I mean, talk about like fear and my trepidation watching, like, please no. And then luckily there was those men just sitting there and he's got the rock in his hand and then he just drops it and walks away. I was hoping that those men would get up and chase after him, but you're right. You're going to probably more than likely, you're going to be like, who is this guy?
Right.
He left. He didn't bother me. I'm not going to bother him. But I mean, this guy, I mean, he's just crazy. He's walking around starving. He's picking up his lead pipe. He's going to all those pipes, and he doesn't understand why he can't just take one. That's the world he lives in. Why can't I just take one? You got a whole bunch here. And the guy's like, this isn't a charity. We're trying to make money. You know, the more we talk about it, the more I enjoy this movie. I really do. Even though there's not a whole lot that goes on, it's the acting. And for me, acting is a huge part of my grade.
Right.
And this movie's got it in spades.
Bro, it's the mind of an absolute maniac. That's just what it is, and it just shows you the duality between the guy you think should be a good guy is just as bad as he is. And I think again, it was just well put together. It reminds me of one of those movies where, you know what, No Country for Old Men, where you're like, this is it, this is the end, no redemption, no arc, nope, because that is real life. Bottom line, it happens all too often. Anybody that works in, if you know any cops personally, which again, I have family who's in law enforcement, you know, they've got a really jaded opinion on life, but they have a reason to. They see a lot more than we see. And, you know, I remember having a conversation with my uncle, and one time him saying, you know, it's so surreal. Like, he doesn't trust anyone because he's seen so many people that looked innocent that ended up not being innocent, and so many people that did not look harmless that weren't harmless. And you know, I kind of live my own. I don't let, you know me, I don't let my kids go anywhere or sleep over at anybody's house. I'm just very protective. My kids are outside riding their bike. Guess what? Me and Savannah are in that garage watching them, bottom line.
Me and my
it's
wife
because it's because of, you know, how scary the world is. And I think that was the message. This director is absolutely amazing. I take my hat off to him. Of course, now that you tell me that he also did Gangs of Wassaimer, you know, he's got some notoriety. He's got some notoriety behind him, man. I just got to see some more of his work.
No, he's got quite the resume. And someone corrected me. Thanks so much for that. Bombay Velvet was the movie I was referring to that didn't do so well. But I'm glad it didn't do so well because it brought him into Raman Raghav. They said in the writing process, he wrote the cop's role, the Ramafin, they wrote his role in that process because he wanted to have some type of mirror image, some type of opposition, but duality with Raman Raghav. And I love how at the end, because with the subtitles and with the names and with the title being Raman Raghav, I just assumed that was his name. I know he was feeding off that serial killer. I didn't realize that he had half the name and the cop had the other half the name. And he says at the end, he's like, I found my Raman Raghav. It reminded me of Heath Ledger saying, "You complete me," which I know is a line from Jerry Maguire. But and Heath Ledger's Joker saying to Batman, "Kill you? I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you?" I mean, they have found each other. And the sad thing is you have the cop, and I can't remember the character. Oh, yeah, Roghoff. You have the cop's character who the whole time is a dark character. He's a jerk. He's, you know, chauvinistic, all that kind of stuff. But he doesn't allow himself to be that killer until he gets to know Raman. And Robin is so excited in that jail cell to talk. I mean, that's another amazing scene. He's talking to the one cop, and he's like, "Can we get this guy out of here so we can have a talk?" Because in Raman's mind, you're like my other half. And the other guy is just too cool for anyone. He's just like, he's ignoring him. What are you talking about? And so then Raman starts telling him, the cop, what he did with Angelita, whatever her name was, and the girlfriend. And he was like, you know, I couldn't do this. I couldn't perform. So I started hitting her, put my hand around her. And then the cop, he realized that he was telling his story. So he's like, okay, you can go now. Let's have a conversation. And he was too cool for everyone in the entire movie. He finally allows someone to talk to him. And it was the worst mistake he could have made. He should have kept trying to be too cool because he started listening to Raman. He realized this guy's going to do a favor for me. I'm going to do a favor for him. I'm going to let the beast unleash. And he goes after that Angelita lady at the end. And let's talk about how dumb was she? I mean, come on. This is like 1990s horror mistakes, 80s horror mistakes, where she's got the double door protecting her. She opens both doors to get her phone, where she knows it has to be the bad guy who has it because he's the one that took it from her. She picks up that phone. She's obviously terrified. And then he gets in and takes her out. But going back to my original point, in that jail cell, that interrogation, Raman and his relationship, even though they're so opposite, it was just, it was a thing of beauty to watch.
Oh yeah, that interrogation is one of my favorite scenes, and that's where he's telling him like, "Look, I don't, I kill because I enjoy it. I don't have to hide behind a badge. I don't have to, count on politics or religion. I do it because I enjoy it." And then he keeps talking about how he completes them. He said, a lot of times when people think about soulmate, and actually I think that's chapter 8 or 9, it's entitled Soulmate. You think of a woman, but he said, we're like two sides of the same coin, and you finally complete me. You gave me purpose. And basically what he told him is like, look, I'm willing to take all this, even the stuff you did, but you left the loose end. So he kind of let him know, like, listen, everything up until now, because Raman doesn't know that Rafa also killed the drug dealer before, because he's also a crack addict, or not crack addict, I would say, but he's addicted to drug. He's a drug addict. So he doesn't know. So this was kind of his test. He says, you could say everything else was accidental in the heat of the moment, even when he killed his girlfriend. But now, in order to save your own skin, I'm willing to take the charge, but you got to go and take care of Akita because she's a loose end, man. And I'm stuck in here. So you're the only one that can do it. And he goes and does it. So the darkness continues. Holy cow. I mean, I would watch a part 2 of this just to see where the Raghav story continues from here. Because now, like you said, he unleashed the beast, and everything up until this point, you could always say it was a heat of the moment. It wasn't calculated. This one was calculated. He chose to do this, and it's like, oh boy, he's just as dark, if not darker. Come on, you're a cop. You're supposed to uphold the law, and come on, he's not upholding anything but himself.
Well, and he had his whatever moral code kept him from carrying that out, and we don't know. Maybe he committed more murders before that, but he had some kind of moral code, even though he was a moral guy. But you're right. Once Raman kind of unleashed the beast, then I mean, who knows where he's going to go after that? I don't know what the second one would be about. I would obviously watch it, but I'm not sure. And unfortunately, as far as box office goes, there wasn't enough of a draw for them to demand a second one. Maybe word of mouth, maybe cult following or whatever.
Right.
I think it definitely deserves another one. I don't even know if Nawaz would do it again. Maybe he would, but I mean, he gave so much of himself in that role when he was preparing for it, when he was acting in it.
Right.
I mean, one other interesting thing about this movie is they use the art, not really art. I can't think of the word right now, but they use guerrilla warfare filming. Thank you.
Yeah.
To where they just, they don't give a warning to the area. They just start filming a scene. They don't really have too many props. They just use the things around them and let's go ahead and shoot and see what happens. And I feel like that's a risky way to film because you really got to have the skills and the art to see it. But again, with this director and his resume, I mean, go for it because it obviously works in this movie. Not all movies have to tell a beautiful story. And I know I'm one of the first ones that's always saying that, but if the movie has something to offer, if it's giving you a message, if it has the acting, if it has some kind of storyline that you can get behind, then that, in my opinion, that's all I need. And this movie is just, I mean, there's so much you can talk about, but the acting is what really brings it home. I mean, honestly, I'm ready to give it a grade. I'm not sure about you.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This doesn't have your normal storyline, and it's just basically a deconstruction of what we think is good and evil into just evil and more evil, okay? And dark and darker. Bottom line, this cop who should represent good, he ain't so good, is he? And just showing that side of humanity. We all have it in us, But yeah, ready to give it a grade. I'll let you go first. I think you know where I'm going with this, but I'll let you go first. Go ahead and give it a grade, my friend.
So I honestly never think about my grade until we actually give it when we're reviewing the film because I like having that conversation to see where exactly are my thoughts at. And so before I give the grade, they go back to the question, should he get an Oscar? If he was nominated the year this came out, he would have been going against Casey Affleck, who won for Manchester by the Sea. I think Casey Affleck's performance is really good in Manchester by the Sea, but I think Nawaz beats him 100% in that year. So that's that point. As far as my grade, and this is an interesting movie because I'm going to base it off of how I feel about it because I feel like this movie misses some elements that most movies have. I am going to give this film, for just sheer value of what you get, I'm going to give this movie a solid A. I really am. I didn't think I was going into because it wasn't a big box office success. There were some people requesting it, but not a whole lot of people.
Right.
But the acting performance alone. I mean, you got to be kidding me. And then there is substance there. There is art, a whole lot of art there. There's a whole lot of skills being shown by everyone involved. And then you have Vicky Kaushal, who's given a great performance. Like I said earlier in the previous part before we had to change, the actress that played the main lady, she did a fantastic job.
Right.
So it's an A for me.
I tell you what, I was shocked you gave it that high of a grade because I know you always talk about how movies have to have balance and there is no protagonist here. I understand that. We're rooting basically for two bad guys and, there's not really an arc because a movie should have an arc where, we have some redemption at the end. Somebody even mentioned it in the comment. There was no redemption. Sometimes in life there isn't, you know what I mean? And this is one of those movies where it's art imitating real life, because if you go and watch some of these interviews, man, I remember watching on Netflix a documentary, The Iceman Killer. This guy is one of the scariest people I've ever met, not met, but seen, and just listening to him speak. He was like, I'd snatch your soul and then go have chicken dinner with my wife. Like that, you know what I mean? So for me, this is A+. This is an unbelievable performance. I cannot tell you, Nawaz is probably one of the darkest. You know what I want to see Nawaz in? I want to see him in a comedy. And I'll tell you why. Because, is he one of those guys that can just play that dark guy? Or is he somebody that has the range to play everything? Because he's, I told you before, he is now one of my favorite actors, period. Forget about Bollywood, Hollywood, Tollywood. In general, he's one of my favorite actors. But it's because he's dark, okay? Heath Ledger, dark. I love those dark actors. I love all the dark content. We've all talked about how I have the affinity for bad guys. But could you imagine him in a comedy? How would he do in a comedy? You know what I mean?
Let me answer that question. So I've seen him in The Lunchbox, where it's not a comedy. It's a dramatic love story, but he plays such a minor character. And he plays like the sweetest, nicest guy in that movie. And he does 100% of a good job. He's in Bajraji Bhaijaan, who they've been screaming at you to watch so you can give your review. I gave my solo review, and it stars Salman Khan. He plays another minor character, a cameraman a reporter who's trying to get a story, and he's not like the comedic relief, but he's such a normal, nice guy in that film too, that it's like, that's Nawaz? Like, it took me a few minutes, and he does a fantastic job. He elevates that movie just a little bit that his character can because it's a Salman Khan film.
Right.
But I haven't seen all his films, but I want to say, yes, he is that good of an actor. Now, one thing that really intrigued me in the OSR interview, and again, we keep referencing that. That was such a good interview. Nawaz mentions that his next 3 projects, he's really excited and kind of nervous for how the audience are going to react to. Because unless he was being sarcastic, he said they're more romantic type films.
No,
and he's talking about 3 of them. So I'm super intrigued because just for that fact. And Pinky Tiki says, yes, he's done comedy. Have you watched Bajraji Bhaijaan? I just mentioned that. Again, that's got some comedy in it. I wouldn't call that a comedic film. It's more of a serious film, and his character had some laughs in it, but he wasn't that comic relief. But yes, he's great in that movie.